Coming up in our newscast tonight. Seoul and Pyongyang are set for another round of general-level inter-Korean talks. This time, the expected central topic is easing cross-border military tensions. The South Korean government is prepared to meet surging power demand due to the abnormal weather conditions. To come up with additional measures, the Korea Meteorological Administration joins in talks to consider other risks and devise new measures. Some changes will be made to the nation's tax code. Measures like raising property taxes are designed to improve fairness, benefit the underprivileged, and aid job creation. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. I'm Daniel Che. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. Tomorrow, another round of military talks will be held between the two Koreas at Panmunjom. In the previous session, some 50 days ago, they reconnected communication lines. This time, the agendas will likely be ways to ease tensions. Park Ji-won starts us off with what will be likely discussed during the meeting at the border village.
The two Koreas will hold another round of general-level talks on Tuesday. The venue this time will be the Peace House on the southern side of the truce village of Panmunjom. The two sides will be led by the same officials as last month's talks, Major General Kim Jo-gun from the south and Lieutenant General An Nik-san from the north. A lieutenant general in North Korea is equivalent to a major general in South Korea. Regarding the agenda of the talks, the nation's defense ministry said the talks are expected to resume topics that were left unfinished at the previous inter-Korean military talks in mid-June.
The talks are expected to focus on specifying issues that both sides had brought up at the previous talks. We will specifically know the exact agenda once the talks begin.
A military source told Arirang News Monday afternoon that the two sides are expected to continue discussing ways to make the de facto inter-Korean border into a peace zone as agreed in the Panmunjom Declaration in April between the leaders of the two Koreas. For such goal, the two sides, according to the source, could discuss disarming South and North Korean soldiers at the Joint Security Area in the DMZ and drawing off currently stationed troops and equipment at some of guard posts, GP, as a pilot program. Creating a peace zone around the northern lemon line, a de facto maritime border in the West Sea, is also expected to be one of the key topics at the talks. During the previous military talks, the two Koreas agreed to completely restore military communication lines both on the eastern and western part of the peninsula. Earlier this month, the western communication line was restored. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Let's move on to other stories now. This year's ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting begins over in Singapore. Top diplomats of the 10-member countries and their partners from key nations, including South Korea, China, Japan, and the United States, will gather for the next 6 days. This year, a key topic will likely be developments on the Korean peninsula. When the FMs of both Koreas and Washington are at the same city, many will watch if they'll sit down for talks. Seoul's foreign ministry claims to be pushing to make that happen, but nothing's confirmed just yet. Kang Kyung-hwa will be heading to the island state tomorrow, and he's expected to participate in 5 sessions, including the ASEAN Plus 3 meeting, as well as bilateral and trilateral talks. North Korea is registered to compete in the World Shooting Championships coming up in late August. A 22-member team consisting of 12 athletes and 10 officials will cross the border to take part at the event held in Changwon. The delegation led by Kim Sung-guk, a 2016 Rio Olympic bronze medalist, will compete in 14 categories, including the 10-meter air pistol. This will be the second time this year that Pyongyang's athletes are taking part in an international sporting event in South Korea. The previous instance was the Table Tennis World Tour Open held in Daejeon early this month. Last Friday, Pyongyang returned home the remains of American soldiers who died in the north during the Korean War. There were reports Washington may have reimbursed the regime for the search and repatriation cost. But according to our EG1, that doesn't seem to be the case.
The U.S. says it paid no money to North Korea for the return of the remains of American troops last week. According to CNN on Saturday, the U.S. State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert said that the Secretary of Defense does have the authority to reimburse the North or any other country for expenses associated with the recovery and storage of remains. But in this instance, she said, North Korea did not ask for money and no money changed hands. She went on to say that the repatriation was a tangible step toward fulfilling the commitment North Korean leader Kim Jong-un made to President Donald Trump in Singapore last month. The remains handed over were in 55 boxes brought back on an American military plane that flew to the north to pick them up. Prior to the return, a Defense POW-MIA accounting agency official had said that though the U.S. government does not pay any government or individual for the remains of missing Americans, it is authorized to reimburse the North for the cost of the operation from recovery to return. A Congressional Research Service report showed that Washington paid $28 million to North Korea as reimbursement for the recovery of remains returned between 1996 and 2005. North Korea experts say the fact that Pyongyang did not request monetary compensation this time is unusual. Some say Kim Jong-un wants to show his decisiveness and sincerity in implementing the agreements made with the U.S., which would also encourage Washington to do its part. There are also suggestions that it could be as the North knows the U.S. would not be able to pay them right now anyway.
Paying them could be a violation of the sanctions. It would be hard for the U.S. to do that while telling other countries to comply.
The expert said Pyongyang might ask for compensation later if their ties get better, and he also noted that in the past, reimbursement was paid later after the soldiers were identified from their DNA. 이지원, 아리랑 뉴스.
With daily highs hovering above 35 degrees Celsius this week, concerns grow over the surge in electricity demand here in Korea, but the government assures they are well prepared. Kan Young-woo explains further.
It's been almost 2 months since the first heatwave advisory in South Korea was issued on June 2nd. But it looks like we've still got a few weeks to go. The highest temperature in Seoul on Monday was 38.6 degrees Celsius, and the Korea Meteorological Administration says the daily highs will remain above 35 degrees at least for the next 10 days. According to the weather office, the weakening typhoon Jongdari, which has brought heavy rain to Japan, is expected to bring only scattered showers to the eastern and southern parts of the Korean peninsula. Perhaps some relief there, but on the western side, this will actually make it hotter. As this moist air from Typhoon Jongdari moves west over the Taebaek Mountains, it becomes warm and dry. This fan effect has contributed to yet more heat waves to Seoul and other western parts of South Korea. With more heat in the forecast and air conditioners blasting, the government has reassured the people that there is enough electricity. After dropping into the 7% range last Wednesday, the nation's electricity reserve margin has jumped back to around 9%, closer to the 10% mark at which the power supply is considered stable.
The second week of August, when most companies resume operations, is considered the electricity usage peak for the summer. We'll face no major challenges even during the peak, as we've increased the supply capacity by at least 1 million kilowatts.
This year's blazing summer has put the country's electricity supply to the test, which so far it's passed, but the government continues to work on a long-term solution. Kan Young-woo, Arirang News.
As scorching heat continues to grip the nation, Parliament and the nation's weather agency have put their heads together to come up with ways to cope with the spiking temperature. Kim Mo-kyun has the highlights from that session.
The National Assembly and the Korea Meteorological Administration held a special forum on Monday aimed at responding to the nation's worsening heat waves. It brought together more than 100 people, including experts in the industry and 3 lawmakers on Parliament's Environment and Labor Committee. In his opening remarks, the chief of the weather agency said the heat waves should be addressed in terms of all the ways they affect society.
I'm expecting today's forum to diagnose the current heat wave problem from various perspectives and to come up with futuristic and practical countermeasures.
The forum began with lectures about how heat waves are likely to change in the future, an analysis of their characteristics, and then possible responses. The speakers stressed that technology needs to be used to improve forecasting, pointing out that the current system cannot predict heat waves beyond the next 10 days. They also spoke about the expansion of public benefits for those most vulnerable to the heat, such as farm and factory workers and some foreigners who could be more sensitive to heat-related illnesses. One lawmaker in attendance said that meteorological disasters could be handled better if people paid more attention to them and promised the National Assembly's utmost support.
I hope that discussions in today's forum can act as a stepping stone to ultimately solving the heat wave problem. I hope today's event can pave the way to a legal, systematic solution.
South Korea has been under dangerously hot temperatures in the past couple of weeks. And with more coming in the next 10 days, this summer could beat out 1994 as the country's hottest year on record. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
The number of patients with heat-related illnesses surpassed 2,000 this summer, already well above last year's total of 1,500. According to the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, as of Sunday, 2,042 people have been diagnosed with such conditions. 27 of them have died. With the mercury expected to stay at alarming levels, the government advised avoiding the sun, staying cool, and paying close attention to the body's warning signs. Past data shows around half of heat-related illnesses were recorded between early to mid-August. There is one benefit to having unbearably hot weather: less mosquitoes, especially the types that carry Japanese encephalitis this summer. The Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says the number of this particular breed, that's small and dark, is down 71.4% compared to last year. Japanese encephalitis is not common here in the nation, but it can be fatal and there are usually a couple of dozen cases a year. The number of mosquitoes in general also dropped by 2.2%. The KCDC points to the extreme heat and the short monsoon season as the key reasons behind this welcome trend. President Moon Jae-in is taking a 5-day summer break starting today, but it won't be all rest and no work. He'll be spending the time away from the public eye at a military installation. According to the top office, the South Korean leader will work on mapping out ways to run the country in this latter half of the year as his administration deals with issues like military reform and a slowing economy. One reason why he's staying at a facility run by the armed forces is so that he can still receive briefings in case of an emergency. Cheongwada adds, unlike last year's timeout, the president will not be in contact with the people. Over in Laos, a dam, part of a joint construction project involving a Korean firm, collapsed, taking lives and destroying homes. Seoul responded by sending financial aid and, over in the weekend, dispatched a medical team to help those affected by the disaster. Cha Sang-mi gets us up to speed with the developments.
The 20-member South Korean medical team dispatched to Laos will set up a clinic at the local health center in Saenamsae in the southern province of Atapu, where the dam collapsed last week. They arrived on Sunday at the airport of Pakse. Over the next 10 days, 15 doctors and 5 support staff will treat displaced residents of Atapu province and help prevent the spread of contagious diseases. The medical have different specializations, including internal medicine, pediatrics, and emergency medicine. After setting up their clinic, they will be joined by doctors from the Atapu State Hospital. Their services are likely to be in high demand from the roughly 3,500 displaced residents being housed in temporary shelters. The team is led by No Dong-hwan from Korea's National Medical Center, who said they will work to, quote, cure the wounded hearts of the Laotian people and do their best to start giving treatment as soon as possible. Dr. No, who has ample experience in disaster areas abroad, said he organized the team based on the information the advance party had sent. South Korea's foreign ministry is considering the dispatch of an additional emergency team or relief supplies in case the current team in Laos or the Laotian government asks for more help. The ministry has already sent out $1 million worth of relief goods, including cash and more than 1,000 blankets and sanitation kits. More than 130 people are still missing after last week's dam collapse, which has so far claimed nearly 30 lives. The reason the dam broke has still not been discovered. It was built by a joint venture that included 2 Korean companies, SK Engineering and Construction Company and Korea Western Power Company. Cha Sang-mi, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories now, the Korean government finalized plans to revise the country's tax code. The changes could take effect next year. Hopes are high the adjustment help promote fairness, create jobs, and address wealth distribution issues. For details, let's turn to our Kim Ji-yeon.
The Ministry of Strategy and Finance laid out plans Monday to revise the country's tax code. It identified three main goals for the revision: to make taxation fair, to boost innovative growth and job creation, and to support those in the low-income bracket. To improve income distribution and narrow the gap between the rich and poor, the ministry says it'll expand the number of beneficiaries of the Earned Income Tax Credit Scheme, which refunds taxes to low-income families. It'll expand eligibility for the credit from the current lower 50% of income earners to the bottom 70%. It also says it'll expand payments to low-income households raising children. The amount provided will be raised from the current maximum of $447 a month per child to $625. Also, reporting of offshore property investments will be tightened to prevent tax evasion. For innovative growth, the ministry says it will provide corporate and income tax breaks for up to 3 years to companies that invest or open businesses in regions hit hard by corporate restructuring. It also says it'll extend tax benefits for research and development in new technologies, such as blockchain and quantum computing, and for companies that hire young people aged 15 to 34. To promote eco-friendly energy usage, the ministry says it'll raise taxes on entities that rely on coal. At the same time, it'll lessen the burden for those using more expensive liquefied natural gas. The ministry also says it'll improve tax incentives for duty-free related businesses, scrap a corporate income tax break for foreign investment, and cut the penalty on delayed tax payments. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix's key semiconductor production lines welcomed a special guest today. The nation's trade minister was there to highlight private-public cooperation as the pivotal element to ensuring Korean chipmakers stay on top of the world. Kim Hae-sung shares with us his remarks.
Minister of Trade, Industry and Energy Bae Gun-gyu visited Korea's top two chip makers, Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, Monday, stressing the need for Korea's semiconductor industry to maintain its global competitiveness. Semiconductors have been the driving force of Korea's economy in recent years, hitting $61.3 billion in exports in the first half of this year and accounting for over a fifth of Korea's total exports. Without the sector, Korea's exports would have grown by a mere 0.1%. At SK Hynix's new chip factory in Icheon, southeast of Seoul, Minister Baek encouraged the company's investment in its new M16 fabrication center that will be completed by 2020. Minister Baek said the government will also support next-generation chip development that could succeed DRAM and NAND through investing in semiconductor design and foundry businesses and making Korea an attractive location for global device and material companies to relocate their production lines to. The government is planning on investing up to 1.5 trillion Korean won or $1.3 billion in chip development over the next 10 years. This comes amid concerns that semiconductors' 2-year supercycle that started in late 2016 may come to an end and that China is catching up with Korea in the global race in semiconductors. At Samsung Electronics semiconductor production line in Pyeongtaek, south of Seoul, the minister emphasized the importance of maintaining Samsung's lead in the sector through fifth-generation NAND flash and foundry businesses, saying demand for more efficient data processing will soar as fourth industrial revolution technologies like driverless cars and AI become more common. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
A new report suggests monthly pay for non-regular workers in Korea is less than half that of regular ones. According to the Ministry of Employment and Labor, in May, those employed on a regular full-time basis earned about $3,000 a month, but non-regular workers employed for less than a year or on a daily basis only took home around $1,300. The size of a company was also a major variable. Firms with more than 300 employees paid around $4,000, while those with fewer than 300 employees handed out some $2,600. BMW Korea is being sued by a group who owns their products. It's the first case here in the nation related to engine fires that led to the German auto giant recalling more than 106,000 units comprised of 42 different models. Today at the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office, 4 BMW car owners together filed a suit against the company and its official dealer, Deutsche Motors. The plaintiff's lawyer says they're asking for around $4,500 each and could request more in damages depending on the results of an inspection. They argue the automaker concealed the defect in the engines and didn't do enough to prevent vehicles from catching fire. So far, at least 7 BMW 520d X-Drive models have caught fire in Korea this year while on the road. Many people in Korea will be away for their summer vacation this week. Interestingly, this season many chose to stay in the country instead of flying out. Oh Soo-young has the full story.
This week is set to be the busiest week of the summer for holidaymakers in Korea. According to a survey conducted by the Transport Ministry, Koreans will make 92 million trips during the vacation period from the end of July to mid-August, and 40% of those trips are happening this week. Most holidaymakers this summer, around 80%, say they prefer to travel within the country.
Last year, many people headed abroad and to Jeju Island, but this year, other islands, especially Ulleungdo Island in the East Sea, are becoming popular. We believe it's because they've been introduced on popular television shows. Trips have increased by roughly 20%. Also, the number of days people are spending on domestic trips has increased compared to last year.
According to the survey, most travellers are heading to coastal regions, especially by the East Sea, which is known for its stunning views and fresh air. With more than 90% of holidaymakers planning to travel by car or bus, nearly 5 million vehicles are expected to hit the roads every day this week. Traffic will peak from Wednesday to Friday. To ensure the roads are safe for the millions of travellers, the ministry says it will put more road patrol and personnel on busy routes, as well as increase the capacity of public transport during the peak holiday season. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Time to turn to Michelle back at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, hot conditions are still suffocating the nation, but it seems like the extreme weather has cooled off somewhat over the East Coast.
Daniel, much awaited showers eased the heat along the East Coast, lifting the heat wave alerts for a change. But the rain is expected to stop today, and by tomorrow morning, the hot conditions will return, triggering the heat wave alerts again. Now, the unusual and record-breaking hot weather has already affected more than 2,000 people nationwide with the heat-related symptoms. So please don't underestimate this weather, refrain from outdoor activities, and also stay updated with the latest weather forecast. And now, Seoul will be the hottest place in the nation tomorrow, literally. Now, the daily highs will soar to near 40 degrees Celsius, and it will also be cloudless all over the nation, so watch out for the high UV levels. Neighboring Beijing and Tokyo will also have clear skies. Checking out the morning low, it will be another tropical night. Most regions lingering between 25 and 27 degrees. And Jeju can expect more rain until the morning. And the afternoon highs in Seoul will top to 38 degrees. Gyeongju and Busan both reach up to 33, and Jeju goes to 31 degrees. Now, looking at this week's forecast for Seoul, the capital city is expected to continue boiling at daily highs, hovering around 38 degrees until Wednesday. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
These are the stories we could squeeze into tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. Wherever you may be tuning in from, thank you for staying with us.